After the great road between Edinburgh and Glasgow, on which Armadale is built, was opened, it became the principal thoroughfare for coaches conveying passengers between these two cities, and many are the stories told of the attempts of highwaymen to hold up the coaches and rob the passengers. But one notable robbery deserves to be recorded here, since a local coach owner was the prime mover, and the Armadale was the centre of the operation. George Gilchrist, a prosperous but ne'er-do-weel horse cooper and owner of the Prince Regent coach, had his stables at the foot of Injun Street, Bathgate, opposite the stable yard of the present Royal Hotel. And learning that a large sum of money was to be conveyed from Glasgow to Edinburgh in his coach, at once set to work to contrive some means by which he could become possessed of the money.
There's £5,000 on that coach of mine. Shh, mate.
At the mid-calendar fair at Falkirk, he met in with a notorious character named James Brown, who o'er a dram in Kippin's Inn readily listened to his nefarious plans.
If only there was a way we could get our hands on that.
It can be done.
A lassie could do it. But who's going to play the lassie?
The modus operandi was as follows. Brown was to journey to a certain point of the road near Airdrie, carrying with them an iron chain, and a short distance further he would join them, travelling inside with the accomplice disguised as a lady, and the money could then be abstracted. And the only difficulty that confronted them was regarding the lady.
Who do you think that could get to do that, James?
Here the evil influence of Brown came to the rescue.
I know the very boy.
George Davidson, a young man who was engaged in Sheriff Substitute's office in Glasgow, being weak and easily influenced, soon got into bad company, and acting under Brown's advice, he forged a bill in the name of John McGregor, the Sheriff Substitute. His thin build and his rather effeminate cast of consequence made him eminently fitted to the part he was to play, and it was not long ere Brown had succeeded in pressing him into the services of the trio. Accompanied by George Gilchrist, he walked to a thick plantation in the vicinity of Forestfield Loch, and from a band box the couple took sundry articles of ladies' fare: a dress, a bodice, a pair of snow boots, an ermine mantle, and a thick veil. As soon as Davidson stepped onto the turnpike road, the metamorphosis was completed, and punctually at 12 o'clock, the Prince Regent coach set merrily off for Edinburgh.
Time.
The coach was light and carried but one solitary passenger. Besides the guard and blithe Jock Macmillan, the driver, as cheery an old Jehu as had ever handled the ribbons. The one and only passenger who skewed the inside of the coach sat side by side with the driver, the picture of silent misery. The anxious little man who now and again scanned the road behind him was none other than James Smith, porter of the Commercial Bank of Glasgow. In the foreboot of the coach, chained and padlocked, was a tin box containing the money, and though the chain was strong and the coach empty, James Smith had a premonition that something was to happen. It was not, however, until at the point near Airdrie that the coach took on its first passengers.
Well, robbers will think twice with him on board.
No apprehension was felt on the part of the porter from that quarter. A mile or two further on, the inside of the coach was occupied when the gentleman accompanied by the lady hailed it. And producing 2 tickets, the couple were put inside by the guard.
Ticket for 2, driver. Okay, inside. I'll get the door. My good lady, if you please.
I've got this, thanks.
Oh, sorry.
My dear.
Not bad looking.
Thank God for that. Yeah. Tools. Right, come on you, we need to swap sides. I need to get down there. Move! Come on! Out the road.
Gee whiz. Ah, look at the state of this.
Gilchrist took out his tools, ripped up the cloth on the coach, and proceeded, with a brace and bit, to bore holes in the wood. Cutting between the holes with a chisel, the twain had access to the floorboot in the coach. An attempt was made to cut the tin box. Finding they couldn't do this, they prised the lid with a chisel and forced the lock. During this part of the journey, while these operations were going on, James Brown, with the chain outside, kept handling it, with such an effect that no movement inside could be detected.
That's it, we're in. Whoa, look at that. You hear that? Aye, I thought I did. Oh. What's him? Mind you. Oh, my mind was on something else. Oh, I agree totally.
After an hour's work, the robbers were in possession of the money, and placing it about their persons, they allowed the coach to proceed about a mile until Armadale toll was reached.
We're coming up in Armadale. Your veil! Here, put that on. Quick, before the carriage stops. Driver, stop! Okay.
The inside passengers alighted and departed after crossing the driver's hand with half a crown.
There you go, man. Thank you. Bye now.
Down the Linlithgow road they went until they reached the old road, when they turned west into the direction of West Craigs and were shortly afterwards joined by Brown. The money was wrapped up in handkerchiefs placed in a box that contained the clothes worn by Davidson and buried in a hole.
Here, you can start the digging.
What?
You. Come on, go on, mate.
Give me that.
Meanwhile, the coach was birling along the road gaily, and it was with a sigh of relief that Smith descended as it drew up at the Uphall Inn,
Mr. Smith.
where he was to meet the Edinburgh porter, when recollected that the only inside passengers by the way had been a young lady of prepossessing appearance and a gentleman companion.
Good journey, you said. Nice couple, you said. We've been robbed.
We have. We've been robbed, Mr. Lorry.
A glance was sufficient to show that it had been tampered with.
We must tell Edinburgh.
I'd agree.
No key was required to turn the lock, and inside there were nought but a small remittance slip and a fragment of a £1 note which had been torn by the robbers in their hasty extraction of the contents. The little party, staggered by the blow, passed into the hostel to calm themselves and prepare to send information to Edinburgh.
More. More.
That's better. Meanwhile, the robbers were disposing of their ill-gotten gains. It was a well-planned affair, and the real culprits might never have been detected had not Gilchrist, while in cups confined in another horse dealer named James Morrison, who had been a firm friend of his in more prosperous days.
James, I'm sorry about all those years ago. You're a good friend. A toast to your health. Good night. I've got a wee secret, James. I'm absolutely loaded, James. I'm going to get another drink. I'll get you one as well.
Ah, you do that.
Morrison, in the hope of a substantial reward, informed the authorities. After a lengthy trial, the jury returned a verdict of guilty against George Gilchrist and George Davidson, and they were sentenced to be hanged on the morning of the 3rd of August. James Brown was acquitted, the evidence being insufficient to convict them. The two companions were placed in separate cells in the toll booth of Glasgow. At the rear of the building was the condemned cells, and within the gloomy, iron-bound dungeons lay the two unfortunate prisoners. But the day of death was not yet to dawn for the lad Davidson. One day, a thickly veiled figure entered the office of John McGregor, the sheriff's substitute.
Mary! It's never you come to haunt me and bring back days which were all but forgot.
Yes, John. It is Mary. I've not come to haunt you, but haunted you will be unless my son is saved from the murderous gallows. My son, did I say?
But I know him not. I never knew there was a child. Where is he?
George Davidson, who's under sentence of death at the toll booth for robbery, and who served in your office ere he fell into evil ways. Oh, save him!
And, despite his position, he carried out a scheme which gained for the unhappy lad freedom and life. The turnkeys' stern, God-fearing men were invited to be present and pray for the soul of the condemned. And while they were on their knees, they were overpowered, gagged and bound, and the keys were taken from them. And shortly afterwards, he was smuggled out of the country by McGregor to Australia. And thereafter, he journeyed to New York, where he remained living the life of a semi-recluse, scarce leaving his little room, lest his dreaded secret should be known. And though George Davidson lived unpunished, but by the dictates of his own conscience, the grim, ghastly nemesis stepped in so recently as the year 1904. And ere the body was cold in the grave, the secret was known to those who came to give the old man his decent burial. Gilchrist, while on the scaffold, expressed his satisfaction at the young Davidson's escape, and his last words were,
Thank God I suffer alone.
but for the fact that the coach was owned by Gilchrist, and that it was proved that he had long planned the robbery, he might have been reprieved, since a strong influential petition was got up in his favour. A great deal of gold was afterwards found, stowed away in the barrel of a gun.